Hello and welcome. My name is Una Shorthall and I am your moderator for this webinar on the School to Energy Leaders programme of the International Confederation of Energy Regulators, ICER. Today's webinar is for the women and men in the energy regulatory authorities all over the world who are going back to make back-to-school visits to engage students on energy issues. So you're very welcome to this webinar. It'll be 1 hour long and we will have 3 other speakers. It's intended to explain what the ICER School to Energy Leaders project is about. And we're very excited because we have 25 men and women from across 10 different countries who are going to make school visits. So thank you to each and every one of you for being an ICER Energy Ambassador. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about myself before I introduce you to our other speakers. My name is Una Shorthall and I work for the European Energy Regulators in Brussels. I also have the privilege to chair the ICER Women in Energy initiative. And under that initiative, since 2013, we have been helping women in our energy regulatory authorities advance in their careers. For example, we offer training webinars, we share inspiring women in energy stories, and we have a global e-mentoring program. This year, we are starting a new initiative called School to Energy Leaders, and in it, we hope to go back and engage directly with schools and pupils through an outreach program to engage students on energy issues. We hope to encourage them to study STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering and maths, and ultimately to try and attract young talent into the energy field. But first, allow me to introduce our other speakers. We have with us today, I'm very pleased to introduce Diane Berman. She is a commissioner with the New York State Services Commission. Good morning to you, Commissioner Berman, and welcome from New York City.
Thank you.
We're also joining us later will be Mr. Wolfgang Orbanchit, who is the Austrian energy regulator. He'll be with us shortly. He'll be joining us live from Vienna. And we also have Virginia Beretta, who works for the Peruvian Energy Regulatory Authority, and she'll be joining us live from Lima. But first of all, I'll go back and explain how this webinar structure works. Following each speaker will talk for about 7 or 8 minutes. You'll have an opportunity to send in your questions. You can do that through the chat box. And we'll also have time at the end, about 15 or 20 minutes at the end, hopefully to take on any more questions. So, but the main purpose of this webinar is in fact to explain to you, our audience, what the School to Energy Leaders project is about. And to do that, we've developed a PowerPoint presentation. It has 2 purposes. One, explain the program. It's a worldwide movement whereby energy regulators make personal school visits to get in touch with the next generation of energy leaders. So there's lots in the presentation slide pack about the program itself, what the program is, the basics of it, who can join it, why, how, some practical issues as well, such as, is my trip financed? What should I talk about during my school visit? What help and resources are available to me? What's my role? Also, some tips on resources and media. And most importantly, we also give you some slides for your own presentation. So this slide pack, in fact, doubles up for you, our ICER Energy Ambassadors, so that you can use some of these slides as well when you go to make your own school visit, should you so wish. So for example, if you want to know what is ICER, here's a slide, a simple slide to explain what ICER is. If you want to then introduce yourself when you go to the school, here's me, Una Shortall. I would explain I grew up in Ireland. I then moved to Brussels to work for the European energy regulators. And for example, you could include a photo of yourself in your school uniform if you went back to your old school, just to make that link between where you are now and the school you're going to visit. Obviously, we have some slides explaining the program. This is one explaining the aims of the School to Energy Leaders program. The idea is to talk to students about energy issues, to encourage them to be curious and study STEM subjects, to spread knowledge and awareness also about energy and diversity, to attract young people into the sector, and obviously to build relationships with schools. I'm going to focus, I won't go through the full slide pack, but I will focus just on 3 points today. The first is some basics about who can go in this School to Energy Leader program, who can make the school visits. And although it's under the framework of Women in Energy, really this is about men and women going back into schools and reaching out and talking to the young people. It's not just for commissioners, such as Commissioner Berman, but it's also for young graduates, for example, who have entered your National Regulatory Authority, because they can relate very easily to students who are just a few years behind them. Which schools should you visit? Well, our principal aim is for you to go back and visit high schools or secondary schools, ideally talking to students who are just going into the senior cycle. So just as they're about to choose their subjects that they will study in that senior cycle. You can, of course, go back to your primary school if you so wish also, but really we're targeting the secondary school students. You may go back to your old school, or you may visit a school where you now live or where you now work, so, or your kids' school, for example. I'll very quickly skip over some of these slides, but you can see there's a lot in the slide pack. I'll focus here on one practical issue which is bound to come up, which is what about the time? Do I get time off work to go back to school, or do I get any expenses paid? And this very much depends on your own national regulatory authority. So you really need to go and talk to your employer about this, but we have provided some guidelines as ICER for our regulators. What to talk about, I can come back to this one in a little bit if you like. And these are some of the resources that are helpful and available to you as the ICER experts who are making the school visits. One important role for you is that you go back and ask people for feedback. So we have developed surveys for both the teachers and the students, and very importantly, we'd also like feedback from you as our ICER Energy Ambassador of what you thought of the school visit yourself. We're doing this because we want to improve the program. It's now on a pilot phase, so we want to improve the program as we go along. So we'd also ask the presenters, the ICER Energy Ambassadors, to share with us your own presentation slides or other material that you've used when you've gone on your school visit. And that way we can build up a good resource bank. So your presentation, we've a lot of slides on, for example, what you do as an energy regulator. And this is important because we would like you to talk about your job and also about other jobs in the energy sector. What we'd really like to see here is that we're breaking the traditional stereotypes. So we want you to explain that there's lots of jobs for engineers, for economists, for administrators, including international jobs as well, for both men and women. As we know, energy sector is vastly male dominated. So we have a very key message here as well in terms of gender balance and gender diversity, and why that is important to us as ICER. It's important because it reflects the population that we serve. It's important for creativity, innovation. There's obviously the issue of fairness and equality, and it also means there's very happy employees and economic benefits. So this is not just a project, I would say, but really one of our core values as ICER. So it's one of the key messages that we'd clearly be able to like you to get across. There's lots of background slides here as well that you can support this with data and so forth. So I'm just going to very quickly run through that. I won't take any more time. I have included a few slides as well on climate change. You're not required to talk about climate change, but for example, it might come up certainly in a European context. It would be very unusual if you weren't asked some questions maybe on climate change. So we'll give you some background material there as well, including, for example, videos, David Attenborough and so forth. So without further ado, I'm going to leave the slide pack, and I'm going to return to our panelists, our speakers, and a warm welcome to Wolfgang, who's now joining us live from Vienna. So Wolfgang, maybe we'll start off with you now that you're settled in, and you've already gone back to school and met with students. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with getting in touch with the pupils in Austria?
Sure, thank you very much, Una. I hope that you can hear me and everything is fine from the technical point of view. So good morning or good afternoon to everybody, wherever you are. I'm happy to share eControl's experience on school projects. eControl is the Austrian regulatory authority, and we have undertaken school projects in the past. The first one is a very interesting one, which is actually an initiative coming from a magazine, an Austrian magazine called Gewinn. Gewinn means benefit or profit. I would even use it as a metaphor for success, because the so-called Gewinn Info Day is a kind of job fair style setting organized by this magazine, and it brings together many pupils at the age of 15 or a little bit older, up to 18. And these pupils are interested in, well, of course, what should they do in future? And in this job fair, let's say, it is possible to give presentations and speeches. And for a fee, so the students have to pay, or the pupils have to pay a minimum fee, but still they have to pay for it. So they are even more interested in getting something out from this thing. In this context, there are speeches given by executives of, in our case, Austria's largest companies, but also representatives from the government, such as, for instance, from the regulatory authority. This was really a great experience because I was there on stage in front of 400 pupils, and I gave a brief presentation of 10-15 minutes. It was about energy, digitalization, e-mobility, innovation. And afterwards, I received many questions. So 20 minutes, I was really asked many questions. So that was kind of challenging for me, but it was very interesting. And as well, we had the opportunity also to have groups, pupil groups, to give even more presentations and information. The pupils had prepared very well for this event, and they even brought the information home. And I think this is really, this has been a great success, and it will happen again in Vienna. In the meanwhile, thousands of students had the opportunity to participate in these events. And I only want to, if there is still time remaining, I would like to mention two other projects related to school. We have back in 2009, we had a school project, and this was about energy and energy efficiency. So what we did, we prepared a modular training package on these issues, and it contained master copies for the classroom, instructions for research tasks and online tools, a computer game, and so on. And this material was developed to be presented and by the class or on an individual basis on computers. And this was also matched with subjects at school, such as mathematics, informatics, physics, for instance. And this was also a good package to be integrated in the work of the schools. And finally, of course, we were invited to go back to schools, our schools, other schools. And just recently, our director of our green energy department, he went back to school and he gave a presentation on our tasks of the National Regulatory Authority. But of course, what we can see is that the young people, the students, the pupils are really interested in topics such as climate change, renewable energy, and this is very inspiring for us and very interesting for us to have a discussion with the pupils. So that's about our projects from e-control, and I can conclude in that way that it is interesting, it is very important, and what my experience is that I really had a lot of pupils in front of me who asked lots of questions, and that was a great experience.
Okay, Wolfgang, so I'm hearing one of the key tips that you have for ICER energy ambassadors going back to school is be prepared, because they are engaged, these students, and they have lots of questions. Is that right?
That's definitely very, very important to be prepared about topics such as climate change, renewable energy, what can we do, what are our tasks as regulators, for instance, to prevent and to stop this climate change. So this is definitely one of the most important things. The second is, I would say also, it depends, of course, what is the age of the pupils, of course. So there is, of course, a difference whether you have pupils at the age of 15 or 18. So they have different interests and, of course, different skills. And therefore, it is necessary also to start at an, let's say, easy point at a good level so that they can follow. And then you will realize immediately what is really their knowledge, because you realize from the questions. I receive questions, very general questions on, again, climate change, renewable energy, and something like that. But then I receive questions about the losses in the network. So really a very specific question, which I think, well, was a surprise to me.
Okay. And have you any tips for our ambassadors in terms of the sort of hurdles that they might face when they're going in cold off the street to visit a school?
Hurdles when you go to school?
Yeah, hurdles. So any particular barriers that they might anticipate?
Well, I think it is important to speak with the teachers first. Teachers are of course important because they have to be prepared. On one hand, they are interested in getting new information, and of course it's not their main topic, it's not what they were trained for, because they are no expert in electricity markets, whatever. So therefore, I think it's important to do this in order to avoid that the teachers are not, at the end of the day, really interested. So be prepared to inform the teachers first. I think that's important.
And for you, is it important to contact directly a teacher, or would you be better off going, say, to the principal of the school? Which approach might be best, do you think?
I think the teachers in a first step, the teachers would be a good idea if you know the teachers, and then they can check it with the administration. But I mean, I don't know how it is in other countries. Of course, in principle, if somebody is coming from the outside and is going to school, it's up to the administration, to the school administration to decide. So at the end of the day, you end up discussing this topic with the school administration, whether it is possible or not. Because at least in my country, it's not just possible. It's not a simple decision of the teacher to ask somebody from the outside to come to school and to discuss something, even if it is a public authority.
Okay. Okay, and just on that note, we have developed as part of our resources pack, we have developed draft letters for you as ICER ambassadors for you to introduce yourselves to the schools, explaining that you have been invited by ICER to go on a school visit so we have those available in about 5 different languages at the moment, and we hope to have them available in all different languages because obviously, Wolfgang, there's no point in us having an English version of the letter for you, you need it in German.
Well, we have English speaking schools as well in Austria.
Okay, but your outreach is wider, of course, if you speak to your locals in their own native tongue. So that's why we've been trying to develop different language versions of our material too. Okay, that's very interesting. Wolfgang, I'm sure we'll come back to you in a little bit. I'm going to turn now to Commissioner Berman, live from New York. Good morning, Diane. And can you tell us a little bit why you're going back to school on a school visit and who you're going to go and talk to?
Thank you very much for having me. So yesterday, Wendy Kopp, who's the founder of Teach for America, was the keynote commencement speaker at a university. And she talked about students about collective leadership. And she talked about the importance of leadership and about it's not just about an individual leadership, it's about the collective leadership. And it's about diverse individuals working together to maximize their differences rather than be immobilized by them. And she said it encourages us to come together to speak, to listen, to reflect, to understand the whole picture, to develop the shared vision for the future, and to generate new solutions. And she spoke about collective leadership recognizes that our power is so much stronger together and that we must have faith that collective leadership is bringing all of us together and that the future really is working with the students to make sure that we are empowering them for their future. And that, to me, that sort of summed up why it's important for me to go back to the schools and to focus on the energy leadership. And so I've been in the energy world for many years. I've been a commissioner since 2013. And I really am motivated by a true desire of doing something that makes a real difference. And I very much think that there are very exciting times now, very exciting, changing, and challenging times in the energy industry. And the way we think about energy has reached a turning point. Everyone is focused on some way on the need to address energy, even if we're not directly connected to it. Energy is a complex subject, and even people who are committed to saving energy often have a completely different justification for it. One person may be concerned about climate change, someone else may be about energy bills being low. And so for me, it's about working with the students in helping them in processing this, in understanding it, and in figuring out what their future path may be and helping to build their leadership. I'm very interested in going back to where I started from. And I came from humble means. And when I was growing up, I never would have seen myself in being in the energy field, let alone being a leader in any capacity. I was very, very shy, so shy that I was put into speech classes because I rarely, if ever, talked. And when I did, I usually cried because I was too nervous to speak. So I was afraid of my own shadow. And I want the children to sort of see that there is a life outside of the classroom and that they can sort of think about what they may want out of life and that outside of working through things and empower themselves. It's about listening to them. It's about knowing where, then understanding what energy is, what it's used for, and being a part of embracing their world and helping them see that they can be a part of the energy world and working through that, empowering and promoting an energy conscious, educated society. And so for me, it's about exploring that with them and giving them some options for their future, and also talking about their current world and how they are also helping and enabling that now. Um, I also want to talk to them about gas and electric safety as it currently is and ways that they can be a part of that, because that to me is a very core and important part of the world that we are in now. And that's something that they can do and be a significant part of, and help us empower right now. So that's some of the stuff that I want to work with them on. My takeaway really is on developing their interest in learning and developing leadership skills and an interest in energy. Even if they go directly into energy, the fact that they can see how to connect energy is a part of their world, indirectly and directly. So that's my focus.
Diane, that's very interesting where you said that you are trying to engage them in their current world and see where they are and what they know about energy. How would you do that in practice if you went back to a school? And what schools are you going back to? Are initiatives generally aimed at the at secondary or high school level? Do you intend going to other schools?
So
How would you engage them?
I intend to start. So I live in New York, in the United States, and so and I grew up in New York. So for me, I plan to go back to my primary school, my elementary school first, which would be the kindergarten through sixth grade, and then I would go to my my middle school, and then I'd go to my high school, and then I would go to my college, and then I would go with my university, and then I would go to my law school. All happen to be in New York, and I would build off of that. Now each one would have different focus. So I would really start out with having to listen to them and start off in knowing and talking to them about what energy they're aware of. If it was the little kids, it would be working with them on some games and activities on what is energy, what do they know about it, talking about, what do they do, looking at an I and I have different worksheets and different games that I have gotten from our U.S. Department of Energy, an Energy Kids fact sheet that has a whole host of resources for in the school, that is geared towards working with the kids on different fact sheets to share with them. But I would also, for me, it's about getting from the kids what it is that they know, what they are then interested in, and also trying to get from them what, even asking them about what they'd like to do when they grow up, and explaining to them what it means that they would need for their job, that it means that it's connected to energy. So if they want to be a doctor in an emergency room, what things that are needed that needs energy. The X-ray machine needs energy to operate. The different technologies. If somebody wants to be a cybersecurity expert, going through different scenarios, so that somehow they're connecting their jobs to the energy world, if they are focused on environmental aspects, and then working through that and connecting it all back to the energy world.
Fantastic. Okay, so all the way from kindergarten up to university, college, you're going back to school to talk to people and be an ambassador about energy and energy efficiency and what people can do. That's wonderful. And what I've been hearing both from yourself and from Wolfgang is that it's important to pitch it right so that you include everybody in the discussion. So we can't expect everyone to be asking about questions about power losses, of which Wolfgang got, but just to engage people at a very basic level, first of all, to warm them up, and then not to talk down to them, but to really engage with them, not to present, but really to engage with them and to have a discussion. I just want to, yes, go ahead, Wolfgang.
If I may add something, and it was already also mentioned by Commissioner Berman, and I think this is really important to give options for the future. When we're talking about energy, it's I think we should explain to the pupils that it's not only a profession with a technical background, because we need people with economical, legal background. I'm a lawyer. I studied law, and therefore, at first sight, to me, it was not obvious to go into the energy business. But in this field, we need all kind of different professions, and I think this information was quite interesting for the pupils, because some of them, they don't want to be technicians, and still they are interested in this field of energy. And at least what they took home is the information that with all kind of background you can work in this field.
Okay.
The other thing is needing to understand where the kids are at, whatever age there are. So for example, if when you visit, there had just been a significant power outage in the community, or if there had been a significant hurricane event or some other event, that's something very relatable to them, and something that is an opportunity to discuss, because it is also on their minds and about the reliability and the resiliency of their world, and that is translatable to them, and that's an opportunity to discuss energy and the future of energy. So that's an opportunity.
I'm going to turn now to Virginia Barreda, who is a gas manager, and she'll talk to us a little bit, I'm sure, about why she's going to make a school visit back in Peru. Welcome, Virginia. Good morning to you. We haven't got sound.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So good morning. First of all, sorry for the delay. Just today in the morning, my old daughter, she is 14 years old, has a distinction, and just is for science and technology. So it's a surprise for me, and I must stay there. So I believe this shows that perhaps girls need a sort of motivation to do something. Perhaps she, if a girl never listened about science, never listened that how she could contribute to society, contribute to do a better world, since what they want to do, as Wolfgang say, could be a lawyer, could be economic, could be whatever she wants, but in a certain way, energy is something that you use in everything. It's a way to make a better quality of life for some people. For example, in my country, in Peru, energy is very important because poor people don't have energy, and that lets them have a chance to obtain a better quality of life. Usually girls, little girls, are the ones who have to recollect wood to cook, or usually are the ones who have to stay at home to take care of his brother or sister, and they couldn't continue her studies at school, at university, etc. So I feel that it's very important they could listen for someone that nowadays work in science, work in energy, that they could do it. It's an opportunity, it's real. Well, in my country, it's a male culture. I mean, women must go to cook and things like that. So I believe it's important here. I am industrial engineer. My father is an engineer. That's why perhaps I follow that career. I study in a school only for women. So if we could inspire them, if we could empower them, I believe they can work to become their dreams true. I have here in Ochinermin, that is the energy regulator in Peru, we have a program. It has more or less 20 years. And we focus on students that have finished university. We have lawyers, economics, and engineers, and it's a program, a summer program, where we teach them and show what we do as regulator. Then the first one, the ones who have the better marks could stay here at Ocinermin in a pasantía, how do you say? Internship for 1 year. And the best one could stay 2 more years. So it's a way we have to show them how they contribute, what we do. And when I read about this program, Back to School, I thought to myself, it's amazing because we could go in an early part of their life, I mean, at school, so they could study something, they could have an objective to follow. It's the first time I am going to participate in this program. It's so I want to learn how to do in the best way, and I feel it's important. If only one girl decided to work in the energy world, I believe it's going to be something good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Virginia. I thought it might be useful. Let me see, to share my screen again. Because you've obviously struck a chord there, I think, with some people. We were talking about girls and the role of girls, and we did touch on this, but it's not just about women in energy either, although that has been an issue. It's also about getting lots of talent, boys and girls, interested in energy. And I don't think we have a hard fight a hard battle to fight there. And we work in a very exciting sector. But I just thought, in a European context, certainly it's difficult to talk about energy without the issue of climate change also coming up. So we've included a few slides there, for example, on one young ambassador. This is a young 16-year-old girl, excuse me, called Greta Thunberg, who started striking outside her school in Sweden, and that led to a whole movement of youngsters, young children, school children, secondary school children, taking to the streets all over Europe, striking for action on climate change. And What struck me as well, just when Diane was talking earlier about being very quiet herself when she was at school, maybe this is a good example of a kid. She herself talks about how her Asperger's, and she was diagnosed with Asperger's and obsessive compulsive disorder and selective mutism, and yet she has become the voice, I would say, of the youth of today on climate change issues. So maybe it's a powerful kind of image for some of our, especially for European students who might relate to that. She spoke as well at the UN Convention on Climate Change, and she has a very powerful message to give. But we're not, of course, encouraging any kids to skip school. They need to stay on top of their studies and so forth. But it can, you know, some of these images are useful. So I just thought I'd share that one with you. Maybe we could go back a little bit as well as to what type of topics might come up in terms of what you could talk about. So we've lots of slides on, lots and lots of slides for you as backup, and we're very interested, of course, in getting your own slides. Here's some tips, for example, and we have lots of notes as well for you as presenters. So, for example, you know, talk about what you know. Don't talk about what you don't know. Don't talk about as well too much about yourself. Allow them to engage. Use videos, PowerPoints. Just simply talk. And what's really interesting is when you find meaning in your job, and you can explore that with the young people. Be very encouraging, of course. Show them how they can save energy, and you know, be very mindful, I think, of, you know, how you speak to them, not in a condescending voice, but really, really engaging and sitting down with them at their level. Take their questions, ask them questions, and so forth. Bring in props as well. So they're just some tips for you on what you might talk about. We require our ambassadors as well to provide feedback. How important do you think that has been in terms of the program that you've been involved in Peru, Virginia, getting feedback on the program? Is that an important element to get feedback from the students or the?
We only have the program with university students, and we have a very good feedback. I mean, they are very interested on that, and we actually have in Ocinermin many of those students, and it's going to be the first time we are going to start a program with school students. So it's our first experience with school students. In the case of university, there is a convocation to the whole country. So the program includes the support to live here in the capital, in Lima, for 3 months, food and hospedation, and they could study the 3 months. But as I told you, it's the first time we are going to start with students at high school or elementary. It's something new for us.
Okay, so very exciting, going back to schools. And we heard from Commissioner Berman earlier how to be prepared for, you know, to pitch it at the right level. And we heard also from Wolfgang how they developed a whole series of material for the schools, online material, that was appropriate to the level of the students, so that they could learn about energy. So, and I'm hoping that as we run this pilot program, that we will build up our own library of resources. Commissioner Berman said there's lots available there in the US. I'm sure there's lots available in different languages. We've just tried to throw some of them in to this draft PowerPoint presentation. And this PowerPoint is really, as I said, it's not just to explain to you, the ICER Energy Ambassadors, about the program. It's also slides that you might like to use yourselves on your school visit, but do help us and give us your feedback on that set of slides so that we can improve it also and build up a better resource, and share with us the actual slides that you do use yourself when you go out to schools. Go ahead, Wolfgang.
I didn't ask. I didn't hear the question.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I thought you said so. You're coming live. Wolfgang, do you have any material that you could share from your previous experience? I expect it was in German. Is it still relevant or not?
Of course, I'm ready to share my material. It was or it is a PowerPoint presentation, okay. And it's in German, of course. But it has a lot of pictures, so I think this is quite useful not to have too much text on the slides. And by the way, when we are talking about topics, for instance, one really major topic was, for instance, e-mobility or in general new technologies. So that's very important for pupils apparently. And you mentioned also the fact that it's not a good idea to talk too much about ourselves or present too much about or talk about the own career. I think that's really true. I mean, the pupils, if you represent the public authority, for instance, I would say for pupils, there are many much more interesting public authorities than national regulatory authorities. And but I see ourselves in our presentations really as ambassadors for the topic, for the energy topic. And I didn't talk too much about our work of e-control. Of course, I gave them some information on what we are doing, network regulation, but in fact, the most important thing is the field of energy. What can you do? What is the future of energy, of security of supply, of affordability, of renewable energy? And that's really, I think, that the most important topic. And as to the feedback, as you ask the question related to the feedback, what I see with young people, you really get direct feedback. So when you're giving presentations in front of older people, they're very polite, and you don't really get, the direct feedback. Whereas for young people, if it's a boring presentation, for instance, it gets loud in the room and they're not asking questions. So you really get a direct feedback when giving the presentation.
Okay, that's interesting to know. And what I'm hearing is that, it's verging, it verges off the main energy topic. It's flowing in. It's very reflective of how energy itself is going and what how we interplay with different markets. I've heard things like e-mobility, electric vehicles, cybersecurity. All of these topics have come up in your talks with schools. So security of supply. It's so be prepared, I guess, is your main point, Wolfgang. Okay. Commissioner Berman, do you have any specific challenges that you can already anticipate?
I think the one thing is also, I think it's important is to also talk to the teacher to see if there are any issues of things to avoid, because there may be certain topics that the school wants you to stay away from or to be sensitive to, or if there's certain core issues that she wants you or he wants you to address, because especially in our high schools, like my youngest son is in high school, and in his engineering class, they actually have a curriculum on energy. So if there's a certain topic that they're already covering, they may want you to either maximize that or not cover that because they're already doing it. So it might be something to be very cognizant of, so that you're in sync with them. So it's important to be aligned with the teacher. And I think that's a good feedback for anyone going in there, especially if you are trying to establish a relationship. It's not just establishing a relationship with the children, but it's also establishing a relationship with the teacher, because that will also help with the future of the School to Energy leadership program, in helping to enable future energy leaders coming into the program to maximize the sustainability of it, and to help us in improving the program.
Okay, we've one question in, and maybe I'll just ask it to each of you, and it's in terms of publicity or press relations. How could you address that in with the school? How would you raise that? Would you encourage people to maybe be on social media, or what's the approach? What's your advice on that in terms of the school visit? I mean, publicity around the school visit.
Well, I would check with the school. Each of our school districts typically have a media communications person, so I would make sure that they were comfortable with social media, and work with them in what the appropriate communication that they would want, and I would follow that and would encourage them to do so ahead of time and afterwards. And I would be very open to any communication being utilized, and I would also be open to filming of it in whatever way they felt comfortable. But to the extent that they might have some student privacy concerns, I would follow whatever their normal protocol was.
Okay. Wolfgang or Virginia, do you want to jump in on that one?
I would agree. I mean, social media is, especially for young people, that's a very good tool in order to promote this. But of course, one has to be careful when it comes to privacy issues. One has to ask and to be careful. But in principle, of course, social media also in other fields for us as a regulatory authority is an important tool for communication. So tweets, Facebook, and so on. And this is something where really can give information also to a group of people, young people, who are well, they are digital natives, and they have their everyday life with these kinds of social media, and therefore it's important.
In our case, the regulator web page, I believe we could have like a corner to students or something like that, and perhaps young people could go to that place and pick the videos or the information we could show them. And also, well, I agree with Wolfgang. Young people usually move in the social web, so I believe that is a good option. And also with the school.
Yes, so it can be good for the school, it can be good for the regulators, but it needs to be agreed in advance, obviously, with the school. I think that's our bottom line. Okay. And obviously, as we mentioned before, one of the important roles as well is to get feedback so that we can improve the program. It also allows us to profile what schools we've gone into. The feedback would, of course, be anonymous. We don't want any details about the students, other than say maybe what age group they were that you spoke to and which city, which country, so we can build up a geographical profile of which schools we got to visit in which country, or not which actual schools, but which countries hosted visits by regulators. So that's what we're trying to build a picture over a period of time.
You have more experience that we in these sort of programs. It's better to focus in one particular age of the children. I mean, it's better for
yes, we're aiming at the
or early years?
senior cycle, so about age 15 to 17. Because that's really when they're keen to learn about job possibilities. It's also just at the stage where they're contemplating their subject choices. And I think every one of our speakers has talked to the importance of STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and maths, so as to not close off options, but also that there are lots of jobs for lots of students with different backgrounds, for lawyers, for linguists. It's a very, very wide and exciting field, energy, with lots of different jobs for boys and girls. Talent is what we need. Okay, but as Commissioner Berman said, you can go back to school at different levels. She's going all the way back to elementary school and bringing it all the way up to university level. But at this pilot stage of the project, we're really talking aiming at that sort of 15, 17-year-old age group.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So do you think this is going to be a one-off, or is there some ideas you have in terms of continuing the relationship with the school after the visit? Have any of you given any thought to that specifically?
If I may start, I will definitely go back to school. That's one thing, and I already received the invitation for the next so-called Gewinninfo Day. So I'll go back to this Gewinninfo Day, and I'm looking forward to do so.
Very good. So repeat visits.
For me, like regulation, it should always be a continual process. So just like that, my school visits should always be a continual process of learning and continuing the journey. So I will be.
Okay. Okay, very good. We're just about to run out of time, so I'm just going to take a minute to wrap up what we've discussed. First of all, welcome to you as ICER Energy Ambassadors, and thank you for participating in this pilot project. There's lots of resources available to you, in particular this slide set, which is a first starting point for you to start on your school visit. We also have the template, the letter template for you to write to your school, introducing yourself. We have the feedback forms. So we have all of these in several different languages at the moment. The feedback forms will be available online on the ICER website so that the students can access them in their own local language afterwards, after they make the school visit. And we would like you to share your presentations and your experiences also. So we'd like that, for example, if there are different speakers, different ICER expert energy ambassadors going back within your country, maybe just to have a group chat with them to see what their different experiences were and so forth. There will be a video of this webinar. So if you've missed today's webinar and you are on our ICER Schools to Energy Leader program, you will be able to watch it later. It'll be available on the ICER website. So a very warm and grateful thank you to our 3 speakers today. Thank you for participating. Best of luck with your school visit. I'm sure it'll be a huge success and you'll be invited back every year, I'm sure. So thank you, and thank you to our ICER Secretariat in Lima. I bid you all farewell today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.